Right, hello, my name's Moran, and this video will be demonstrating the level design layout and a brief concept view of my digital media studios game, Souls Art. So the general premise of the game is that it is a hack and slash top-down dungeon crawling game. It's similar in vein to games like Diablo, but unlike Diablo, it's less about killing like hundreds of enemies to get lots of like loot. It's more of like a methodical combat involving a lot of like dodging and blocking sort of thing. It takes a lot of inspiration from like the Souls games in that regard. So for the studio project, I created a small dungeon to sort of show off like the general layout for what this game would sort of be. It's very much a dungeon crawler at heart, and the objective of this dungeon in particular is you play a main character, a knight with a sword and shield, and you have to go through these rooms trying to find two switches that will open up two doors that will lead to a boss at the end of the corridor in one big room, and killing the boss will finish off the demo, as it were. And the switches are on two opposite sides of the map. Depending on player feedback, I might have to change how many rooms I add or reduce difficulty and whatnot. So as it stands now, at the time of recording it, the character movement and like enemy demonstrations having to be done on the default mannequin models. I have created and imported character models. This is, for example, this is the main character model without weapons. The weapons have been made and will be imported as well. But once this character has been rigged and skinned and some animations have been added, this will then take the place of the mannequin model, and then I can start adding certain movements like attacks and such. But as it stands so far, I'll give a more of a top head overview of the dungeon layout. The reason why some of it isn't textured fully is because all of the walls and floors are made with BPSs, and for a while they did just use materials that were in the Unreal Engine, but then I found some textures online, edited them, changed them, made normal maps for them, and I've implemented those into the walls and the floor as well. Strewn throughout the dungeon are chests as well. These will contain healing items. These won't be 3D assets, they'll be like 2D assets in a HUD in the game, and pressing a button will allow you to activate them and heal yourself, as well as other things as well I have planned. So this is the enemy model, the default enemy model. I still need to make one more character model for the main boss, but I'll just show you what that looks like as well. Just to give a demonstration for like the size and like placement. This is like sort of what he'd look like. Be similar in design, but would have more armor and just be bigger and more opposing. He'd have different weapons as well from the other enemies, just to sort of show like difference in the enemy types. But it's mainly just a placeholder right now. But the standard enemies will all look like this. However, there will be 3 different types of enemies, which will all have different types of weapons. There'll be an enemy with a sword and shield, there'll be an enemy with a two-handed sword, and there'll be ranged enemies with a bow and arrow. And the player will have to demonstrate different tactics and incorporate like different methods in order to handle them and take them out one by one, sort of thing. Again, these enemies, they've been made, but they just need skinning and rigging first, and then they'll be given like movement patterns and such. And yeah, each of these different characters will be like different things. Like, for example, in this room, like these 3 front enemies will have like melee weapons, and like these 2 in the back, or like this one in the back over here will be, say, like have a bow and arrow, and they'll try and take you out from a range, so you have to focus on that as well as dealing with these enemies at the same time. There are several rooms around the dungeon as well which are optional, which will contain these chests, or there'll just be more enemies. So you definitely have to scour the area in order to find the switches you were looking for, that you need to look for. And dying does restart the mission. That's the general idea I have for it now. If the game is too hard, I might have to tweak that in order to make it easier, or add a checkpoint system. This is one of the first switches. These switches will open up those the doors from earlier. Let me just change the camera speed a little bit so it gets quicker. Yeah, these two doors for both of the switches. And once they're activated, the boss area will be completed. I'm thinking that once both of the switches are activated, checkpoint will activate. That'll just allow you to, in case you die, you can just go straight to the boss in order to deal with that. But this area, along with other areas in the map, most of these areas will contain such, but this one is more of a demonstration mainly for the traps that I'd like to add into the game. I have been making them, texturing them and like retopologizing them is being a slight issue at the moment, but they are nearly done. But the general idea I'm going for is a sort of pressure plate, like booby traps. Certain areas will have like spikes that will jut out of the ground at certain intervals, so you'll have to go over them at the right time. And this particular area, this treasure chest, will contain something useful for fighting enemies. It will help the player deal extra damage for a short while. However, by walking over this area, you'll activate dart traps that will be stuck out of the wall that will fire in certain intervals. You'll have to traverse this plank without getting hit, and you'll fall into the spikes, which are not there yet, but they will be at a later date. So yeah, that is the general idea of the game. Just to show you that in more detail, the other rooms I have. There's the other switch, of course, and there's some additional stuff. So we'll go into the blueprints that I have so far. Again, because I've been having to I'll have to animate all of these characters. Excuse me. I feel like doing all of that first and getting all of the assets made and out of the way first before I get into the difficult part of adding the blueprints and code into the game. But so far for this template character I have, open up the blueprint editor. So far with this, we have the different controls for the character. There's the movement controls. This character does come with default WASD controls. However, I had to change it and implement essentially newer controls to the game in order to get the secondary aspect that I wanted, which was for the character to follow the mouse. So this part this follows the WASD, but it also links into the mouse input area. It's like this. So every delta second it checks to see where the reticule in the world is that it follows the mouse, and then it sets the player character's rotation to be looking in that direction. So you move around independently with the WASD, but you look around using the mouse. It's sort of like a twin stick, except with keyboard and mouse. Oh, there you go. It's just set what location and rotation. So your location is where you moved your character, but your rotation will be where the mouse is at that given time. This area also fits into the getting hit part. There is health in the game as of now. The only damage you can take is from the other enemy template character running into you and touching you, and then you lose a tenth of your health. But the system's been set up so that you can't continuously just take damage from an enemy running into you and just instantly die. So there is essentially a vulnerability timer that is set into place, so that when you get hit, the enemy character will stop moving, and whilst motionless, they won't attack you until you move again. That will have to be changed again when the characters get attacks. The enemies get attacks, and then I'll have to set it up so when those certain animations play and characters not blocking, then they'll take damage from that, of course. But so far that's what I have for damage in the player character. Just to prove it, I'll go to the enemy character. essentially what what the enemy will do was just continue to follow the enemy, or follow the player character, move to their location. If they've met that character, they'll stop moving until the player character moves again, in which case they'll start up again in order to deal more damage. I'll just give a quick demonstration of that. The reason they move so slow so far is because the character models for this have been scaled up once the main character model has been adjusted and rigged and fully ready to animate. Then I'll replace them and change the walking speed so it's at a more reasonable pace than this, because it is quite slow. But this is how they'd interact. I'd also have to find a way to prevent this reticule from going up stuff, because as you can see, you can do that. It's kind of not what I want. It's fine to this, but if I go through walls, it gets stuck like that, and then I have to move to readjust, and it can be a little awkward. Also need to rebuild the lights on that. The torches will provide most of the light. I've been trying to get the skybox to have a darker light, but it also has to readjust the torches so that it's not completely gloomy. But the general layout for where enemies will be using these things. These are my the green part anyway will be the recast nav meshes. And this is essentially, each one will correspond to a group of enemies or a single enemy, and it will be their area of effect essentially. So when you enter it, they'll they'll activate essentially and try and attack you, and if you leave, they'll sort of go back into their original positions and go into an idle animation again. And yeah, that's what I have so far. Like I said, I want to implement the traps, make a few more assets, add in other assets that need to be added in, like the weapons for my character and the weapons for the enemies as well, and then I can start working on the code in order to make the game run properly, I suppose. Be looking forward to getting some feedback on this. We'll be needing some help with blueprints and such, but other than that, it's just a matter of getting on with it and finishing my assets and then starting to work on finishing the game. So thank you.